Hey guys, welcome back to video tutorial number 22 of iPhone app creation. Before we start the tutorial today, I want to let you know that I've upgraded my Xcode to Xcode 12. You can see that the icon image has also changed. If you have not already done, please go ahead and do so. There are some cool features that you can explore. I'll show you one of them during the app creation today. So here we go, open the book tracker tutorial. Where we left last time was there are few nuances we had in the app which we want to get corrected. Just to showcase the same, I'm going to run the app again and show you the areas where we have some issues. So if you recall, we have created an app with two or rather three tabs. We have completed two. One was about adding a book to the library. The second is a display book, and third is search, we yet to be implemented. In the display book, we have reading to be read in red. As you can see, last time we created a book, The Last Scintilla. It is currently to be read. And you know that we have added the updated function where we can go ahead and update a book as well. So let me show you the small nuances which we want to get corrected. So if just keep in mind, we are in to be read, book name is Last Scintilla. I will go ahead and update it. What I want to do is I want to change the status from to be read to currently reading. Okay, and update the status. Watch carefully what's happening. So when I update the status, last time where I changed the add book status back to add book from edit book, but what you see here is it comes back to the same tab to be read. So there are two issues here. One, the book has moved from to be read to reading, right? But it still shows over here. And the reason being is the screen is not refreshed. So if you try to do any function over here, it will result in an error, right? That's number one. Number two is you literally have to go to reading to find the book. You come back again, it goes away. So the screen is not refreshing with the new value. So what we want to do is, the first thing we want to do is want to refresh the screen every time the update happens, right? Go ahead and stop it. And you know that there are two view controller files we have. One is the display book view controller, which is where the books are displayed. If you see here, and there are two functions which the lifecycle function we have done before. One is the view did load, and other one is view did appear. If you recall, the view did load function is called when you load the view for the first time. Every other time after the first time loading, you want to call the view did appear is called. So you can see that that's the reason the first time table delegation data source association, we're doing it over there. I think this function is redundant because regardless of whether you're coming for the first time or the second time, view did appear to be called. So this load record is called twice. So I'm going to delete it from a cleanup standpoint. But it is not harming you, it is wasting resources. And then in the view did appear, what is happening is I am always loading records of the first tab, which is currently reading, and book tables reload data is done. But what is happening is my focus is always on the load record. Okay. Now, what I want to do is the first thing first, I want to make sure that when I update, I go back to the segment where I want to be, right? So for that, you have a segmented control, this view, if you recall, in the main storyboard, this segmented control. And currently you can move between that by tabbing, right? And when you tab, it keeps going like this from 1 to 2 to 3, right? So let's do first thing first. Let's try to get a association to the segmented control like a outlet, so that we can let the outlet or the segment move to the right index based upon where we want it to be. Okay, so you know how to do it. Go to main storyboard, uh, do a split screen, go to this first one, and maybe you want to go display, and this is your tab view, your main storyboard. As you can see that in the new Xcode 12, you get a bird's eye view of your entire screen, so that you don't have to, earlier if you recall, you have to minimize it, go back to where your screen. So if you have a complicated screen setup, and this kind of helps you of where you are. So we want to be in our uh, display book, so I can simply click on it and move there rather than trying to figure out where I am. Okay. So here you are. So this is the segmented control, and I want an association. You know how to do it. Press your control key, drag it. There are three different ways I taught you before. If you have forgotten, you can go back to I think the initial part of my tutorial, and this I have taught you before. So I will create a variable with the name status segment, or maybe segment status, and create a weak connect to this right here. So with this, I have a connection back to this segmented control. X out your view. Now with this segmented control, let's do this. One way to do it is always come back to the first tab, right? So regardless of you're coming by updating a book or adding a book, or for the first time you're coming, let's make sure your segment is always one. Okay. And if you recall, yes, it is always one for the first time, but when you move between tabs, when you come back, it remains on that tab. And if you want to quickly see it again, let me show you what I basically mean so you understand what I'm talking about. So you're here. So in reading, perfect. Let's say I go to be read and try to add a book, come back, read, let's say I add a book, or let's say I come back to display again. So it remains on to be read. I want to always come back to reading, let's say, right? The first tab. The way to do that is you use your variable segment status, which is giving a connection back to it's an outlet giving a connection back to the segmented control. You say dot, just like you did for the tab, selected segmented index, and they are numbered. 0 is the first one, 1, 2, you have 3, so they're 0, 1, 2. So if I say 0, regardless of from where it is coming, it will always go back to 0. Okay. Let's quickly test that now. So you do this. We'll do the same thing we did just now. Let's go back to be read, go to add book, and come back here. So you see that it comes back to reading. So I go to read again, add book. Without adding book, I come out of it. It comes back to reading again. Brilliant. So we have done one thing. It comes back to this. Now try to update this, right? So I say it's in reading. I'll bring it back to I have already read. Okay, so I update it. I say read, and I update. Comes back to reading, and it's in red now, right? So I go back, update this, and I make it currently reading. Update this, it comes back to reading and shows you the book. So both the jobs are done. So now you are able to bring it back to the first one. In this case, since we made the book currently reading, was showing up over here. But if you recall, if I update this and I say read, and then I update, it comes back to reading. It's empty, but book is in red. How about you want to do that? You want to, after updating, instead of coming back to always reading, you want to go back to where you, if it is read, go back to read. To be read, you go back to be read. Reading, you want to go back to reading. To do that, you have to understand few basics thing, because we are talking about cross view controller variables. So what I basically mean by saying that is, update is happening in the add book or update book event, right? This is on the second screen, which is a second view controller, which is add book view controller. And based on what you do there, you want to change things on the display book, because the segment is on the display book. This is known as variable passing. There are many ways to do that. You can pass variable by creating a segu, which I have not yet taught you guys, but in the future session I will do. But for today, I'm going to teach you something known as application level variable. So as you know, this is your class. So class has boundaries, starts from here and it ends here, right at the end, right? Anything you define within this class, it is visible to the class in the scope of the variable. So for example, when I say books variable, I can access in load record, I can access it in display book when I'm displaying the book using table view functions, right? So this is a class level variable. At the same time, if you define a variable within a function, for example, take this function, which is a segment value change. This function, you have defined a variable status, and that status predominantly is only defined within here. So you can access the status within the boundaries of the segmented value control. What is an application level variable? Application level variable stays above the class, but you can define any class, but when you once you define it, it is available to all. My personal view, I am not a big fan of variables at a class at an application. Reason being is anyone can update it, and it is available to any method, any class within your function. And right now we have two classes, yet easy to maintain. But imagine you have 15 classes, hundreds of methods, and if you are updating the variable from different methods or different classes, very easily you can cut up the application. So I'm not a big fan of it. And if you define it, be very carefully controlling who can update and who can see the value. But just to show you the functionality of it, I'm going to show it to you. In the future classes, you're going to change it to segu base, which is like when you update, it is within the scope of that function or that class, and can pass it back to the class that you want it to, right? So that you can limit the scope of exposure of that variable and can manage your application in a better way. Otherwise, when you define as a set at the application level, you need to be very careful about who can update that resource and who can use that resource. Okay. So with that background, you can define a variable here as if variable uh, where you want to go, which segment, which segment to, right? This is a string variable, and I am going to give it a starting value which is currently reading, right? So this is the value I want to give. So what will happen is, based on this segment, I'm now focusing more on selected segment index, right? So what I want to do, I don't want to go to 0 all the time. If it is currently reading, yes, I want to go to 0. If it is to be read, which is second one, I want to go to 1. And if it is the read, I want to go to number 3. So I can use a switch command just like I have used here, right? Similar concept I can use here. So I'll say switch. The value is which segment to, right? And I say case pattern is currently reading is the first one. I'll just copy and paste it. And if it is currently reading, I want to go to the first index. So I'll copy this from here, or I'll exit out and put it over here. Then I have another case. I have 3, so I'll make case number 2, which is if you are in to be read, and if it is to be read, then I want to do the segment index as 1. Please note these values are what I'm storing in a database. So based on how you're storing it, I'm using the same one. So if you use a different one, you can use it accordingly. So you can say 1. Okay. Okay. Now here I will say default, and for the third one I don't have to, so I'll simply say copy this here and I'll say number 2. Make sense? So now based upon which segment here it will move on. But wait a minute. Right now we are only setting it here. So for the first time it will work fine. But what we want to do, we want to set this segment after updating or saving a book, right? So if you're saving a book to one of these categories, you want to change it, and that saving and updating is happening where? In your add book. You have 2 methods if you remember from the past. One is your save book method and the other one is the update book method. What I want to do is, I want to say just like you're saving it in the book, remember this is an application level. I have defined it where? Above the class, so anyone can access it. So I can access this segment here. So I say which segment 2. See, I'm having this variable, and I can assign whatever the status field is, right? So if you take to be read or currently reading, it will give you that value, and I'm assigning it back to this segment. Similarly for update, right here, I can do it right after the function is called, update is done. Before I go to the segment 0, I can assign it here. So I say which segment 2, and I can assign the same thing, status text, right, and let's force it to make sure it's not empty. So whenever this is updated, when you come back here, first time it'll get currently reading. When you update it, view did appear is called. When it is called, what will happen is you will get which segment to, and based on that, you'll go to 0, 1, or 2. Okay, you want to see this? Let's run the application. Okay, so you're here. Your book is into read, and I want to make it to be read. So the second tab. So I go to update, make it to be read, and I update it. So it comes back here, but guess what? Your book is still not there. You have to still do twice to bring the book here. Why is that? It is because when you're loading record, you're only loading book for the tab, and it is always fixed to currently reading. So unless you are not changing that, it will not happen. So it's very easy, right? You already have what you want in which segment to. And if you do this, it should do the job. Let's quickly run this. So you're saying the load book for the tab I want to. For the first time, we're always currently reading. When you update and save based upon from where you're coming, it should do the trick. Let's do it now to see how it works. So you have it in to be reading. I will make it red now. Okay, the third tab. Update, red, save. See, it comes here and it shows the book as well, right? Now I add a book as well. I say add a book to talking to strangers. Author is Malcolm Gladwell. This is a non-fiction book, and I want to make it, let's say, currently reading. Okay, so it should go to the currently reading tab. Oh no, currently is the first one, so maybe something else. I'll say I've already read that book, right? It will go to read the third tab, and it should show that new book also over here. See, I have last until already there. I have talking to strangers, and I'm the right one. So that way you're making the app more intuitive. You're making it very dynamic. You're coming to where you want to based upon adding or updating, and you can connect to your users in a much more better way. You're reducing the clicks as well. I was minded when you use application level variables, you have to be very, very careful. As you can see, updating that is changing function, and if you have a complex application and you accidentally make the variable dirty, you can have an impact on the functionality of the application, and tracing down where you're changing what has to be done manually. So we typically avoid that, and we will talk about how to change it using Segio in the future classes. So hope you like what you have seen. Your app is completely functional now. The only thing that I wanted to add is the search function, which we'll take upon in the subsequent classes. Take care. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, please do subscribe and share the URL with others whom you think will like the application creation using Xcode in the iPhone environment. Thanks again. Bye.